morning, everyone. Welcome to my backyard. Today we're going to be doing a watercolor from nature based on flower forms. So we're going to start just taking a little amble through my yard, and I'm going to be picking from what's available and really looking for a variety of colors and shapes and textures so that we have a lot of information to work from. If you don't have a backyard, you can always just go and pick up a bunch of flowers from the store, or you can work from images. But working from the real thing is just delicious because it's so tactile and you can smell it and see it and touch it and feel it, so all your senses are involved. So let's go find some more flowers. So I love these spider flowers because they're just so crazy. They feel like fireworks in a flower. But I'm not going to pick these because there's only 4 of them. I've got more upstairs and we'll get those later. But this incredible pink, I think we definitely need because I don't have that color yet. So I'm going to grab one of those. This is called a cardinal creeper, and you can tell why. I mean, look at that crazy red. They don't pick that well though. I wonder if I can try and find, no, I'm not going to mess with that. So you don't have to have everything flower. You can have some stuff that is just greenery. Like here's some really super fine baby's breath, so we can grab a piece of that just to give you a different texture. We're going to go upstairs. I call this upstairs in our yard. Salvia, yes please. Because look at that awesome purple. And they're also just like the funkiest shape. I mean, it's hard not to be in a good mood with that. Oh, and contrast. So I'm going to pick some white as well. These are from my friend Judy from J.L. Turner Center. She brought them to me last year and I planted them and they're going crazy. And these 4 o'clocks are also from my friend Sana, also from my FiftyForward class. Let's grab some of the yellow because I don't have that color yet. And they don't need to be like the perfect flowers. Sometimes the dying flowers are just as cool and as interesting, but adding contrast and texture. So we're going to go this way because I want some sunflowers and I want a spider flower. And then we'll probably have plenty. So all the sunflowers in my garden were planted by the birds. I didn't plant a single one. But look at that. So happy. And it's hard not to just deadhead while I'm here. Hang on. A gardener's work is never done. I have that kind of color. And then I'm going to grab one of these firework inner flowers. And don't be intimidated by like looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, I would never be able to paint or draw that. It's too complicated. Just go for it. Okay, so we're painting on the porch today because it's beautiful out. And I'm just going to go through the materials required for this project first so that you can make sure that you have everything you need. we are doing sort of a lovely, free-form, expressive, flower-inspired watercolor today. This one, which was completed actually 2 years ago, my mom painted it. She came to one of my classes and painted it, so it's kind of lovely to have her here in spirit. This one was done with liquid watercolors, which is not what I'm going to use today, but it is certainly an option you can use if you have liquid watercolor. I'm going to be using just traditional watercolors. I have my pan here, and I have my palette, which is watercolor, which is squeezed out of a little tube and then placed in the palette. I know it looks really messy, but that's just because I use it. Then I've got 3 large containers of water. So please don't ever try to do watercolors with a tiny little container of water, because you will end up painting with mud. So I've got 3 big containers of water, so I don't need to go and get new water during the class. And then a selection of brushes. For this project, a big brush is really nice because we want to be working in big gestural strokes, not tiny little details so much. So I'm going to be using this really big fat brush. If you have a flat brush, that works too. So I've given myself sort of a range. Some thinner brushes for detail if required. Gosh, this brush is not in good shape. I'm just going to put it to the side. And then for finishing off, we're going to be overlaying the watercolor with detail in either a marker. I've got Sharpie, I have watercolor markers, and I have just a regular fine point black pen that we're going to be using to overlay on our color palette. So that's about it as far as materials. Paper towel is always good, just in case you spill something and need to mop it up. But that's about it. So we're going to start by observing our subject matter, which we just picked from the garden. So I have kind of arranged things so that not all the purples are together. So I've got this big splash of yellow in between these pinks and purples. I've got some nice texture. I've got this amazing purple and yellow up there. A spider flower, a little bit of white. So I'll show you how to do white. Basically, you just leave the white paper when we're doing watercolors. So organize your subject matter in a way that is pleasing to you, and you can use your page portrait or landscape. And I think I'm going to do this one landscape because my other little prep one I've done in the other I've done it portrait style, so we'll do one of each. So I'm going to start with my nice thick brush, and what you're going to do is you're going to observe your subject matter almost as if you're squinting your eyes. So you don't want to see intimate detail. You want to just get an overall feel for where the blocks of color are. So I'm going to start with this yellow, which is front and center. So I'm mixing myself a nice big puddle of bright yellow, which I have going here. I'm going to add a little bit of this yellow. For those of you who've taken class with me, you know that I hardly ever use the color straight from the palette. I like to mix so that your colors are your own. So I'm going to put my sunflower down first, and I'm not going to be too particular about getting it exactly right. I just want to get the feel of that block of color. So that's all I'm doing for that. Cleaning my brush. You can bang it down in the bottom of the water. I'm using a yogurt cup here, so you can bang it down. That won't damage your brush. So that's going to be my dirty water bowl always, and these are my 2 clean water bowls. So I've done the yellow. Now I'm going to look what's next. I've got these beautiful purples right next to, so I'm going to try to mix something that imitates those colors. Getting it exactly right is not the object here. You just want colors that sing on your page. So you'll notice this one I work from the center out, so maybe here I'm going to work from the outside coming in to give myself a slightly different feel of brush technique. Don't worry about the little splashes, it's all going to add to our final effect. Now I've got a purple, so I'm going to add something a little different to this puddle here, or maybe actually. And your color can be really nice and saturated because we're going to layer the detail over the saturated color. And sometimes you need to mix for a while before you find just the right thing. Don't be too impatient. You know, if it takes a while to mix the right thing, that's all part of the process. I think I like that. So I'm putting, this is the dahlia on the side, and again, you know, you can use a different kind of brush technique to create that dahlia feel. Notice how I'm not overworking. It's like one of those less is more things. So just fields of color. You'll see in some places the colors will run into each other, and that's fine because it's watercolor and that's what it's supposed to do. Again, cleaning my brush in the dirty water bowl. So I'm just going to keep moving on. I've got this lovely like lilac-y salvia up there, so I need to mix that. So that's got quite a lot of blue in it. Let's go with this little puddle of blue here. So remember, with watercolor, if you want the color to be lighter, you just add more water. If you want the color to be darker, you add more pigment. It's not a case of adding more white or adding more black. That doesn't work with watercolor. Kind of like this, but I think I want it a little dirtier. There we go. That's it. So this salvia is kind of a long, skinny shape. So I want to imitate that. The long skinny shapes, and there's two of them, and I'm going to put them in here. Pick up more paint. Whoa! And this is why you have a paper towel, because that is probably coming out of my brush. Sometimes if you get a new brush, it sheds it for a while, just like a dog. Oh, and then I see another one sort of in the foreground here, so let me put it in while I've got the color mixed. There's one here. Okay, and we're just going to keep on going. I'm working from right to left just because it's my preferred angle. It works well for me. I've got a beautiful orange here. I'm going to mix for this zinnia, which is sort of tucked away. So I'm not overworking any of these things. I'm doing kind of minimal mark making just to get it down on the page. Now I've got this crazy like cerise pink. Oh my gosh, I love it. All right, so let me see if I can mix something that does that justice. Not that. I think it's this right here. This is it's called Rose Madder. If you don't have Rose Madder, I'm sorry. Rose Madder is like the most amazing color. You'll notice if you go to Michael's or any of the art stores and you choose Rose Madder, it's expensive. Sometimes the good stuff just costs more. Okay, so I'm putting in this amazing zinnia, which has yellow in the center. So I'm going to do a purple field, and then I'm going to do the yellow in the center. So I am going to shorthand that by just doing like a circle of the purple. and it's not purple enough. I want more. More. There we go, that's better. So I want to save that white in the center. And I'll come back to that again when it's a little drier. And then I've got my spider flower, last but not least. And I think I'm going to use a slightly thinner brush for that, just because the petals of the spider flower are really small and delicate. And it's a very pale pink. So if I wanted pale, I just add more water, less pigment. And I'm going to put it in here. And again, I'm doing sort of a shorthand for the spider flower. It's kind of little bunches of petals that are spidery. Oh gosh, I just put the wrong thing. Do you see what happened there? It was pale pink and then it wasn't. Okay, and the last but not least, I've got a little bit of purple salvia. So I'm going to mix this and this. There we go. Sometimes you have things on your palette that are just perfect. Okay, so I'm happy with all the color I put down. You'll notice I haven't done anything for the white daisy because I'm going to just leave that white and just draw it in with white paper. But I am going to do the center of that daisy, which is like a greenish yellow. So let me just mix that. Always painting with clean water. Greenish yellow, there we go. Good, and I'm going to put that daisy here. So I'm just doing the center of it. Greenish yellow. So just remind me later that that's the daisy. Don't let me forget about it. All right, and now I'm going to, ideally, just let that dry for a little bit, and then we're going to come back and put in the greenery. So I know, it looks nothing like anything yet, but it will. Okay, so I cheated a little bit and blow dried mine just so that we're not here all day. But if you're doing this at home, just walk away from it, go have a cup of tea, you know, answer some emails or something, and then come back to it when it's dried. The reason we do that is that we don't want all the colors bleeding into one another. So once the watercolor is dried on the page, it's not going to bleed into a fresh round of watercolor that you apply. So I'm going to be putting in the greenery next, but first I do remember I need to do just the little yellow inside of that zinnia, which I didn't do yet. So I'm just going to put that in, and it goes here. And you can see I'm just placing the color. I'm not doing like what it is. And because the purple is already dry, I don't have to be so super careful. I can overlap a little bit and that's fine. This little one here has some yellow in it too, so I am going to attempt to overlay a little bit of yellow in here. And because the bottom is dry, the yellow just sits on top. And I've got a little bit of texture in the center of the sunflower, which is a little bit greeny. I'm going to put some of that in there. Oh my gosh, all my brushes are just shedding today. I don't know, it's hot. Makes my brushes shed. So just a little center there. Is there anything else? Oh, we could put a little something something in the center of that zinnia. What is it? It's more like a deep purple. So I'm just picking up a color I had already mixed. And you can see I'm doing this with a slightly smaller brush. Cool. beautiful. And we could even put a little bit of detail around. That's the center of our white daisy. So you can do more of that or less of that depending on your style of work. I'm just going to add to the center of this zinnia, and this is going to bleed because the yellow is still wet, so see how that goes. And I kind of like that. Oh, hang on, I missed a little guy here. Sorry, there was a piece of salvia here that I missed, so I'm just going to put that in. And you can see the difference between the very thick brush and the thinner brush. Gives you a very different kind of texture and feel to what you're painting. So I'm going to move on now to doing some of the greenery. I'm using my medium size brush, and I'm going to mix a bunch of different kinds of greens to mimic what I'm seeing here, because the sunflower leaf is different from the zinnia, is different from this baby's breath, and you want to sort of create the feel of that variety. So let's mix some green. And again with this, it doesn't have to be, you know, like scientifically correct. It's all about finding something that is pleasing to your eye and is creating the feel and look that you're going for. So I'm going to start putting in some of the greens. Don't be too worried about, oh, this needs a stem and that needs a stem. If it gets a stem, great. If it doesn't, also fine. You can use your brush in different ways, using the point of the brush, using the base of the brush. I'm going to mix some more green here. This is like a beautiful lime green, which I'm going to do with this little baby's breath, which has kind of little dots on the end and then flicky pieces. Filling up this space, and you can overlap because a lot of your paint is dry underneath. So I'm continually looking up at my subject matter to see what I have there. Look for information, look for inspiration in what I have in front of me. I've got some really dark green leaves there. Oops, wrong. So let's mix a beautiful dark green. There we go. Add a little blue to it too. So I want some more dark greens here. And leaving white paper is cool. You can leave a fair amount of white showing. Don't feel like you need to fill every single section, every spot with paint. The white allows the color to sing. If there's no white contrast, then there's no contrast. And, you know, take a moment to sort of step back a little bit and look from afar. I'm getting close to thinking I have enough here. I'm just going to do some of the green for the baby's breath. So I'm going to introduce a different green. And if you're not sure how to do green, if you don't have a lot of greens in your palette, playing with yellow and blue in different combinations, you're going to be able to mix yourself all kinds of different greens. So here's my baby's breath explosion. I'm letting some things overlap. Don't worry about letting lines overlap. I have an ant on, on my page. This is what happens when you do what this is called plein air. If you want to get fancy, plein air painting, painting in in nature. So ants are just part of the deal. It's what the Impressionists did, painting in nature. So I'm standing back looking. Oh, I see a little bit of yellow in my dahlia, which I haven't included, so I'm going to add that. Nothing to say you can't go back and add more. There's a little yellow in the center of that dahlia that I didn't get. You know, and I could keep going for probably another half hour with this, but it's always good to know when to stop, depending on the kind of feel you want. And what I'm going for today is something super summery and light. I don't want it to get too heavy and muddy and complicated. So I'm almost good to stop here. What I am going to do is just show you one more thing. If you want to deepen the layering of your watercolor, and I'm going to show it to you on the salvia, for example. Once I've got my purple down, but I want to sort of deepen it, I can work over what I already have and add a little blue to it. So I've already got the purple here, but I want to add a little more texture to it, so I am just going to go over with a second layer. And you can create shading this way. I'm going to add just a tiny bit to my spider flowers too, just to give them a little more depth. And maybe a little bit more blue to these ones over here. So this isn't, you know, if this feels good for you, you can add that a little bit extra layering of texture. But be careful, once you start, it's hard to stop. I keep seeing things I want to add. Like here. But you can't, it's very easy to overdo. So, you know, keep stepping back and saying, oh, is that too much? And I think I'm very close to overdoing this. So I'm going to stop. And again, what we would like to do is let that dry before we come back and do the final layer, which is where we add, I detail with markers or fine line black pen, or you can even use pencil. So we're going to stop for a moment. I'm going to let this dry, and I'll come back to you for the last little bit. All right, so my watercolor portion is dry. I used a hairdryer. It's ideal to not do that, just to let it dry naturally, because your colors will be more vibrant. So what I'm going to do now is to overlay some detailing with, I've got 3 different things. I'm going to use a fine line black pen. I have some black and gray markers, and I have a good old-fashioned Sharpie. Make sure that your watercolor is completely dry before you move on to this part, because if you try to use any kind of marker on a wet paper, it's just going to ruin your marker and it's not going to work. So just be a little patient with it and let it dry all the way through. So there's no sort of rhyme or reason of how to go, where to start with this. You can start anywhere, but what I will be doing is observing my subject matter and then taking information that I see and putting it down on the page. So let's start with the white daisy. Remember I said to you that in watercolors you can't paint white, so how are we going to make a white daisy? So we just did the center of the daisy right here. And then what I'm going to do is use, sorry, I need a piece of scrap paper here, just to make sure my pen is working okay. It's always good to have a piece of scrap just to Make sure your pen is going. So I'm going to look at where the petals are, and I'm going to start to put the petals in with my black pen and not fill them in. And that's my white. Super simple. And I love how, well, certainly when I do this, I like to sort of accentuate just how sort of crazy the flowers are sometimes. Like they're not well behaved. They're just a little crazy sometimes. So you can put in a little shading if you like. I think I'm going to just do a little bit of extra around here. You can play with different kinds of pen techniques. And I keep looking up. Oh, look, spider. Is that a bad one? Goodbye. So I'm observing what I see and I'm putting it down on the page. So I've got a combo here of pen and watercolor and my white paper shining through. And again, don't overdo it. Too much is sometimes too much. Some spider flowers, so there's these thin little pieces which I'm going to put in with pen, like the explosions. I keep looking up to see what I'm looking at. So it's not like I'm outlining every petal, I'm just sort of giving an impression. Putting some of the baby's breath in here. It's kind of fluffy and flowery, soft. And I'm going to work right over my work with this first pen, so that to make sure that there's some of it everywhere. And then you'll see I'll do the same thing with the Sharpies. I think I'm going to add just the center of the zinnia with this pen. It's just like little baby details in there. A little crosshatch here, why not? So you can be quite freeform with it. This is quite graphic. And I'm looking and looking and looking, so the information I see will get translated to the page. Yours is not going to look like mine. Mine is not going to look like yours. That's why it's art. Okay, I like that. Okay, so maybe enough of this one for now. Let's move on to something else. So this is sort of a gray. Hang on, I think I want something a little lighter. Not that thick. Yeah, that's good. So again, I'm going to work across with this next texture, some of that, and then I'm going to do this beautiful purple zinnia with this guy here. So he's going to be very graphic. Trying to let my mark making be different each time. So just play with it and have fun. So I love how spidery that guy is there. I don't want to get too much around my white daisy, so maybe just add a little detail to this here. I need some of that mark making here so that it's, you know, it's not only in one place. Try and repeat it at least in 3 places. That's a good rule of thumb. If you have a color or a texture or a kind of a line, if you repeat it in 3 places on your page, you're almost guaranteed to get sort of a good sense of composition and balance in your work. I mean, if there are any rules, that's a good one. The rule of 3, it's called. Okay, enough of that. I'm going to move on and do something a little, oh, not the thick side. The thick side is a little extra. Again, sort of looking from a distance, where do I need more input? I'm going to go with this guy here, center of that zinnia, which is awesome. And you can see how I'm using the color just kind of as a backdrop for the detail. Maybe here on our dahlia. So I'm suggesting, you know, you can see this is not, oh, ow, something's biting me. This is not a biologically accurate drawing. We're giving it a feel. I think that's good. Sunflower. I think I'm going to do the sunflower just to show you different options with a lead pencil. And because my watercolor is completely dry underneath, the pencil goes on so beautifully. And again, I'm just giving a suggestion, serving suggestion of a sunflower. Notice I'm not like laboring anything. You can work really quickly, try and keep it fresh. This is where just having a little bit of, what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? You just have to have sort of faith, like, okay, this is going to be all right. And you know, if I mess up, I can do another one. It doesn't have to be perfect first time. Nothing to say you can't use different kinds of mark making, just tapping it down. It's not exactly a Fibonacci. What do you call that thing? Fibonacci. Oh my gosh. It's those amazing patterns that nature makes, and there's one in the center of that sunflower. Okay, so I'm going to I need pencil in 3 places. Add some there, and maybe some here for my spider flowers too. Look at it from a distance. I think it's close to done. I think what I would like to do is just a little bit more of heavy black, just to kind of bring it all together. So I'm using good old Sharpie. And I'm just going to put in some stems here in the center to create a kind of focal point, something nice and strong to hold it all together. Maybe a little background contrast there. And my dahlia. And I keep looking up at my subject matter, so it's not like I'm just pulling it out of nowhere. I'm looking at the textures and the overlaps and what am I seeing, what can I use. These are kind of the seed pods from that spider flower. Put those in. And again, look from a distance. I think this is done. So last but not least, always look for the most boring corner. So it's not that one, it's this one. And sign your name. What's the date today? 08/20/2020. Voila! There we go. So there's my inspiration, and there's my finished piece.